Black Janitor hid for 8 years. That she was a fighter pilot until they forced her into the cockpit. For 8 years, Denise Walker mopped floors, emptied trash bins, and blended into the background of a bustling aerospace facility. To most, she was just the black janitor who quietly went about her work, unseen and unheard. No one suspected that behind her calm demeanor and humble job was a history that could stop them in their tracks, a past lived in the clouds at supersonic speeds. But secrets have a way of surfacing, and when an unexpected crisis struck, Denise found herself stepping into a role no one could have imagined. What happened next would leave the entire building in stunned silence. Denise started at the Virginia Aerospace plant in 2012, grateful for the paycheck, but determined to keep her head down. Years earlier, she had walked away from a prestigious career as a U.S. Air Force fighter pilot, not because she wanted to, but because she had been cornered by systemic bias and quiet retaliation. She had graduated near the top of her training class, flown dangerous missions overseas, and logged thousands of hours in F-16s. But when it came time for a major promotion, she was passed over for a white male colleague with far less experience. When she raised concerns, she was labeled difficult, and her assignments dwindled. It became clear that the ceiling above her wasn't made of glass. It was made of steel. Leaving the military was the hardest decision she'd ever made. Denise buried her flight suit deep in a box, telling herself that part of her life was over. At the plant, she kept to herself. No one there knew her story, and she saw no reason to share it. But every day she passed gleaming fighter jet fuselages on the factory floor. Her hands ached to touch the controls again, yet she forced herself to keep walking. She was determined to never return to the sky until the day everything changed. It was a sweltering summer afternoon when the plant buzzed with excitement. Military officials were visiting for a live demonstration of a newly completed fighter jet. A decorated test pilot had been scheduled to perform high-speed passes and precision maneuvers to showcase the jet's capabilities. But minutes before takeoff, disaster struck. The pilot slipped from the ladder during pre-flight checks, injuring his leg badly enough to be grounded. The visiting officials were already in the observation deck, waiting. Canceling the flight would be humiliating for the plant and could damage their standing with the military. Supervisors scrambled to find a replacement, but the only qualified pilots were hours away. In the control room, tension turned to nervous laughter when someone joked, "Unless our janitor wants to fly it." The chuckles echoed down the hall. Denise, quietly wiping down a table nearby, froze. She glanced toward the hangar, then back at the supervisor. "What's the aircraft's fuel load?" she asked. The room fell silent. A few smirked, thinking she was bluffing. But she set down her cleaning rag and walked straight to the hangar, eyes fixed on the jet. Word spread fast. Workers gathered, whispering and shaking their heads. Inside the hangar, Denise moved with an efficiency that stunned the ground crew. She checked the panels, verified the hydraulics, and called out instrument readings without hesitation. The crew exchanged wary glances. She wasn't guessing. She knew exactly what she was doing. Her supervisor finally asked, "Who are you, Denise?" She met his gaze. "Strap me in and I'll show you." The engine's roar filled the air as Denise taxied the jet onto the runway. In the observation deck, the visiting officials leaned forward, confused about why a woman in janitor overalls was at the controls. Then, with the practiced grace of a veteran, she launched into the sky. The jet climbed sharply before leveling out in a flawless pass over the crowd. She pulled into a perfect vertical climb, rolled seamlessly into an inverted dive, and recovered just feet above the tarmac. Gasps replaced skepticism. She executed a sequence of tight turns, low passes, and precise rolls, maneuvers only the most experienced pilots dared to attempt. The officials were riveted. Her colleagues, many of whom had never given her a second thought, now stared in awe. Her final maneuver was a slow, controlled pass with the landing gear extended, a subtle yet unmistakable pilot's salute. As she taxied back, the applause from the observation deck was thunderous. When she climbed out of the cockpit, helmet under her arm, the plant manager stepped forward, still stunned. "Denise, who are you?" She took a deep breath. "Former U.S. Air Force, fighter pilot, 8 years. The story spread through the plant like wildfire. Some co-workers approached her with newfound respect. Others avoided her entirely, ashamed of the times they had dismissed her. Later that week, Denise was invited to speak at a Veterans Appreciation event. She told her story plainly, the missions she flew, the bias she endured, the promotions she was denied. She explained how walking away wasn't about lack of skill, but about surviving a system that refused to see her worth. "I spent years letting other people decide who I was," she told the crowd, "and I learned the hard way that sometimes the only way to survive is to disappear, but disappearing doesn't mean you've stopped being who you are." Her words hung in the air long after the applause ended. Back at the plant, things didn't magically change overnight, but people started looking at her and each other differently. Denise became a quiet legend in those halls, not because she flew a jet that day, but because she reminded everyone that greatness can be hidden in the most unexpected places. And somewhere in a dusty box at home, her flight suit no longer felt like a relic. It felt like a part of herself she had finally reclaimed.